Africa has held its national and provincial general elections last year, November, around May, where we have seen this ushering in of a seventh administration that has given birth to the government of national unity. And Deputy President Mashatile is given a responsibility by our President, President Cyril Ramaphosa, to be a leader of government business in that GNU arrangement. Our Deputy President is also a chairperson of the GNU clearinghouse mechanism, because all of you will understand that in a coalition government, there ought to be mechanisms that you put in place for clearing up disputes as and when they continue to arise in the cabinet of that particular day. He's really doing justice in that regard, where he's putting parties together to agree on a common cause. Our Deputy President is also given a responsibility by our own government to be the chairperson of the AIDS Council in our government of national unity by our president. So you can then understand that Deputy President is wearing many hats within this seventh administration, within the context of our government back home of South Africa. The Deputy President was born in Pretoria on the 21st of October 1961. Earlier on, when we met with the Prime Minister of Japan has alluded to the age of the DP. All of us were shocked that they are of the same age. So he was born on the 21st of October 1961. He became the Deputy President of the governing African National Congress in December 2022 in a conference that was held in Nasrec Expo Center, where he was unanimously elected into that role at a political level. Before his election to that position in December 2022, our Deputy President served as the ANC Treasurer General from December 2017, and also he acted as the ANC Secretary General from January 2022. You can see that from government side, he's wearing many hats, and also when you go to the political space, he's also given several responsibilities. Ladies and gentlemen, our Deputy President also is an anti-apartheid activist in the United Democratic Front, where Mr. Paul Mashatile was a member of the President Zuma's first cabinet, where he served our government in several portfolios, of course, serving as a Minister of Arts and Culture between the years 2010 and 2014. Before that responsibility of being a Minister of Arts and Culture, our Deputy President later, between the years 2014 and 2018, he held several ministerial portfolios in the Gauteng provincial government, where he served it exceptionally well. Mr. Mashatile was then appointed as the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa in this seventh administration on the 6th of March 2023. He was also reappointed again after the elections on the 30th of June 2024, immediately after the generally held elections that I spoke about, and he was also given the same role by our president to be the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa. Without any much ado, ladies and gentlemen, shall we rise on our feet as we usher in the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa to the podium.
Thank you very much. You may be seated. Thank you very much, Deputy Minister, for the introduction. And also, let me thank the Program Director. Greetings to the United Nations University Rector and Under-Secretary General of the United Nations, Professor Chilizi Marwala. Greetings to Parliamentary Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister Eri Alfia. I'm told she just went out. Greetings to all our panelists who are here present, our cabinet ministers, deputy ministers, the Church d'Affaires, Shaje, our interim ambassador here, Ms. Annelies Schroeder. Greetings to all the scholars and academics who are present and all members of the university, distinguished guests. It is a great honor to stand before you as the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, reflecting on South Africa's G20 presidency under the theme Solidarity, Equality and Sustainability. Before I delve into this subject, let me take a moment to appreciate the diplomatic relations we have established with Japan over the years. The two countries upgraded their relationship to a strategic cooperation partnership in 2010. This year, the two countries celebrate a significant milestone of 115 years of relationship. These ties have particularly flourished in the fields of trade and investments, science and technology, and education and skills development assistance. Japan is a significant investor in the South African economy with about 273 firms operating in the country, hence sustaining over 200,000 local employment opportunities for many South Africans. Earlier today, I had fruitful engagement with Prime Minister Shugeri, as well as the Cabinet Secretary Hayashi. These meetings are a sign of the significant people and trade relations between our two sister countries. I also had an this afternoon when we visited the Meiji Jungwe forest, which represent tranquility and appreciation of nature in the development of society. This visit served as a reminder of how the forest and nature cements the importance of connecting people, what has been appreciated here in Japan as kami. We have a responsibility as a people, and we do share a lot of common things as a people. Hence, we will continue to invest in what we call people-to-people relations. This is already happening through the number of South African rugby players that are playing in various teams here in Japan. The Minister of Arts and Culture, who's here with us, was telling me that one of the players has just arrived recently. So the number is increasing. Program Director, we are emphasizing the importance of people-to-people relation because it becomes clear to do business when you know each other's culture. My delegation and I are here in Japan to fortify these partnerships, especially in light of the present geopolitical challenges confronting our nation and the global community. We want our two nations to collaborate with a particular emphasis on promoting inclusive economic development and ensuring a balance and increase in trade between our two nations. Let me talk a little bit about our government, known as the Government of National Unity. This has also been one of the priorities of South Africa's 7th administration. It is popularly known in South Africa as the Government of National Unity, or GNU, and in South Africa's democracy. Our convergence as a GNU has been inspired by a shared purpose across all political formations, which is building a better South Africa that is 10 political parties in parliament. As you know, that often coalitions are maybe 3 or 4 parties. We are 10 political parties. But this GNU has given expression to our culture of collaboration regardless of our differences, because we obviously come from different political parties, but we are able to work together in this arrangement. The notion of solidarity to us is not a new phenomenon. Solidarity is what has earned our country democracy. Through solidarity, we seek to achieve a future that is people-centered, development-oriented, and most importantly, inclusive. This year, we will be hosting the G20 summit in November. Since the assumption of the role of the G20 presidency in December of last year, because we took over from Brazil last year in December as South Africa. And we want to make a meaningful contribution to the expression of the continent through Vision 2063, which is the Africa we want. Such an Africa is one that is more integrated into the global community and acts as a key player in the economy and the socio-political level. One country have an impact at the global level. Currently, the world is facing severe and relentless challenges that are testing our global humanity and the solidarity between nations that served as a backdrop of the formation of the United Nations 80 years ago. Several major megatrends are influencing the world, including globalization, geopolitical instability, climate change, rising nationalism, demographic changes, technological convergence, conflict and war causing further hardship and suffering, therefore jeopardizing subdued. And many economies, especially in Africa, carry the burden of unsustainable levels of debt. Across the world, billions of people are affected by underdevelopment, inequality, poverty, hunger, and unemployment. Our G20 presidency has been beset by tectonic shifts in global affairs. Challenges of multilateralism, while evident for many years, have become a dominant reality that continues to alter global realities and relations fundamentally. Conflicts between Russia and Ukraine, conflicts in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, in Sudan, in the Sahel, and in Gaza continue to exert a heavy human toll and heighten global insecurity. Deepening conflict and instability across Africa and the world require coordinated preventative action, including a dedicated intervention on peace building that is programmatic in nature. In this regard, we are encouraged by the partnership between the United Nations University and the University of South Africa, UNISA, in cooperation with other relevant partner organizations to co-design and co-deliver required capacity building programs for African leaders and mediators for resolving conflict and blazing a path towards achieving peace, security, and prosperity. The timing is eminent and opportune. There is an urgent need for comprehensive African-centered peace-building research and training programs that span throughout Africa to address the urgent demand for capacity for conflict management and resolution, as well as society reconstruction. In our G20 presidency, South Africa will continue to advocate for diplomatic solutions. Inclusive dialogue is the foremost guarantor of sustainable peace. South Africa has shown a firm resolve in its foreign policy by promoting principles of justice, solidarity, equality, peace, and respect, underpinned by its commitment to human dignity and leaving no one behind. This is why South Africa has placed solidarity, equality, and sustainability at the center of its G20 presidency. Regarding our intention to place Africa's development at the top of the agenda, we have identified 4 priorities for the term of this G20 presidency. Our first priority is to strengthen disaster resilience and responses. To us, this is important as we have recently witnessed natural disasters such as floods across Africa, affecting both our coastal and inland provinces. Natural disasters cause widespread damage to infrastructure, economic activity interruption, and livelihood destruction, including unfortunate loss of life. The second priority is to ensure debt sustainability for developing economies. The G20 will prioritize debt sustainability for these developing economies, particularly addressing rising sovereign debt levels and servicing costs. Demonstrate leadership in addressing global economic imbalances and fill the funding gap necessary to achieve sustainable development goals. The third priority for South Africa G20 President is to mobilize finance for a just energy transition. South Africa's G20 presidents aim to mobilize financing for a just energy transition by focusing on limiting global temperatures increases in an equitable and just manner. The country has pioneered the use of country platforms to coordinate funding through the Just Energy Transition Partnership. The fourth, this priority is harnessing critical minerals for inclusive growth and sustainable development. Our hosting of the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting and the Business 20 provided an opportunity for us to promote South Africa and Africa as a business and investment destination, and for the country to take the lead on providing solutions to global economic challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, South Africa is also making efforts to maintain investor confidence. We are addressing structural obstacles to economic growth. Local and international investors are now taking a fresh look at South Africa. We believe that addressing structural concerns is essential to maintaining investor confidence and ensuring long-term economic stability. It is only by accelerating structural reforms and harnessing the power of the private sector that the country can sustain economic momentum and attract further in foreign investments. As South African structural migration, managing national water infrastructure, reversing the logistics crisis, especially in our ports, restructuring state-owned enterprises, and strengthening the state response to corruption and organized crime. We have a program called Operation Vulindlela, which is a joint initiative between the Presidency and National Treasury, which aims to modernize network industries like transportation, digital communication, water, and power. Let me say a little bit about some of these issues, just briefly on energy. Our country is implementing several reforms to stabilize the country's energy supply, reducing load shedding risks, and accelerating the transition to renewable energy sources. Raising the licensing threshold for embedded generation project will allow private companies and power producers to build new projects without applying for a license, as long as they meet the grid code requirements. The Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Procurement Program will add new generation capacity to the grid over the next 2 years, primarily through wind and solar power. This will ensure that we don't return back to the days of load shedding. On water, through the water sector reforms, we aim to increase Regulations will ensure accountability for water quality and proper pricing for adequate investment in water infrastructure. Establishing a national water resource infrastructure agency will enable South Africa to expand its bulk water infrastructure and improve the management of existing water assets, ensuring water security over the next decade. On transport, briefly, in addition to all this, through the transport sector reforms, we aim to improve the efficiency of South Africa's logistic infrastructure. This will help to grow exports and attract skills and promote tourism. We are also implementing e-visa system and expanding visa waivers to make it easier for international tourists to visit South Africa without needing to apply for a visa through an embassy or a consulate. A visa recognition system is also being explored, allowing tourists to enter South Africa if they have a valid visa from a limited number of countries with strong security controls. Our industrial policy aims to unleash private investments and energize the state to boost economic growth and inclusion. This program director is an essential part of building investor confidence and a platform for job creation. Furthermore, South Africa has a wealth of natural resources, with gold being among the most significant minerals. But we have vast agricultural land and property assets suitable also for real estate development. Investors should take advantage of this opportunity as well as the diverse market, which include our position in Africa and the Africa Free Trade Agreement. Our government is committed to removing blockages to economic growth and lifting expansion to above 3% of GDP in the medium term. As the government of South Africa, we have also made a concerted effort to adapt to a new reality by changing business practices and reviewing policies to keep pace with global trends. Government plans to invest in revitalize skills and generate high-quality employment. I'm sure Professor Marwala will be very happy to hear this. In this regard, the National Digital and Future Skills Strategy provides a framework for inclusive collaboration between industry, labor, higher education institutions, and the broader society to develop these new skills and capabilities for our nation. I want to briefly quote Professor Marwala here when he said the following. In one of his publications, he said, "Artificial intelligence will transform the job market, creating new opportunities while rendering some jobs obsolete. Our challenge is to prepare the workforce for this transition." It's you, Prof, on this one. Artificial intelligence is a transformative force that has the potential to revolutionize various sectors, including healthcare, education, finance, transportation. As artificial intelligence technologies develop rapidly, it is crucial to navigate this vast landscape with wisdom, thoughtfulness, and responsibility, as a professor said, ensuring that no one is left behind. So As the G20 presidency has shifted to South Africa, artificial intelligence has emerged as a key area of focus, with UNESCO as a privileged partner. And through the G20 presidency, we aim to harness artificial intelligence for a medium to advance the Sustainable Development Goals agenda and address global challenges. We are encouraged by the United Nations University to work alongside other African countries to develop artificial intelligence, as I said, which has the potential to considerably boost the continent's economies. African governments are also recognizing the importance of digital economy, which is heavily influenced by artificial intelligence. The digital economy and artificial intelligence are becoming more important drivers of economic and social value creation throughout the world. So we as South Africa are investing in digital infrastructure, skills development, and entrepreneurship to assist Africa's digital economy to expand. I want to also to once again quote, are not optional, they are fundamental. We must embed ethical thinking into the development of artificial intelligence technologies. I hope I quoted you correctly, Prof. Ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations University in Japan is a hub of knowledge and innovation, fostering a convergent group of bright minds to explore artificial intelligence potential for humanity's betterment. Once more, I urge the university to partner with African organizations on a journey of discovery and innovation that will shape humanity's future for generations to come. Professor, I did receive a letter from the Thabo Mbeki Foundation that they would like to partner with this university to create your presence in South Africa. I can assure you that I support that. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, because I need to leave some time for the panel, no challenge and no triumph exist in isolation. Cooperation is our greatest strength and our most powerful weapon. And once again, let me also join you, Prof, in emphasizing our guiding principle of Ubuntu. Minister Steenhuisen also used this word earlier on in a meeting where we were. And briefly, this means that I am because you are. It is a profound belief in our country, and it reminds us of our interconnectedness and the interconnectedness of humanity. It is this principle of Ubuntu that underpins South Africa's leadership and vision of the G20 presidency and our future. I am because you are. South Africa is dedicated to cultivating mutual understanding and collaboration across countries, establishing a feeling of oneness that transcends boundaries and differences. As we continue this conversation with our panel of ministers today, we should remember that true progress is achieved not through words alone, but through meaningful action and collaboration. We should be deliberate in our conversation and find more meaningful ways to strengthen our relationship, both in trade and investment. Let us work hand in hand towards a more just, equitable, and sustainable world order for all. Arigato gozaimasu.
Thank you, Deputy President Mashatile. We are grateful for your presence and inspired by your words. We will now move on to the panel discussion, and I would like to invite our moderator and esteemed panelists to the stage. Moderating the event is Professor Chilizi Marwala, Rector of United Nations University. Today we will be welcoming 4 panelists: Mr. Gayton Mackenzie, Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture; Dr. Nobuhle Nkabane, Minister of Higher Education; Mr. John Steenhuisen, Minister of Agriculture; and Mr. Parks Tau, Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. Esteemed honorable ministers, please join us on stage. Over to you, Professor Marwala.
Thank you very much. First, good to see you, Mr. Mackenzie. First, allow me to thank His Excellency, Mr. Paul Mashatile, for his insightful speech, instrumental in ensuring that this relationship with the University of United Nations University and University of South Africa comes to fruition. That is Madam Ike Game. Can you please stand up so that you can be applauded? The G20 presidency at a time of significant global challenges. The decisions made over this future is something that we need to bear in mind. As we look to creating a more inclusive and equitable plane for all and reimagining our path, we are honored to be joined by some of South Africa's formidable ministers from 3 different political parties. I think you can give that a round of applause. The panel will explore the country's vision for its G20 presidency. Solidarity, equality are inspiring. Minister of Higher Education. And one of the things that people don't know, I'm also a farmer. And farming is hard in a place called Valwater. Mr. John Steenhuisen is the Minister of Agriculture. Please let's give him a round of applause. And the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, whom I've worked quite extensively with in the past, Mr. Parks Tau. South Africa has articulated several ambitious goals for its G20 presidency. I would like to start by asking Africa during the crucial period Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. Could you begin by sharing your perspective on South Africa's key economic goals within the G20 and how they reflect both national priorities and global imperatives?
Thank you very much for good afternoon to the Deputy President and everybody. something that's understated is the fact that this is an African G20. And we take seriously that it's not just a South African G20, it's an African G20, and therefore. Okay. Yeah, this is a bit more convincing. So it's an African G20, and therefore the way in which we host the issues we put on the table should be reflective of the challenges that we confront as part of the Global South, but as Africa in particular, and the theme would be reflective of global governance reforms, particularly in the areas of debt restructuring and sustainable finance, as well as in relation to global trade. Our G20 presidency, therefore, will ensure that we advance issues with regards to the reform of the World Trade Organization and multilateral trading systems and the integrity of multilateral trading overall. Secondly, we will opportunize investment into South Africa and Africa's development and industrialization. Our leadership will strive to align the G20 with Africa's integration into the global economy. This has become potentially shaping global trading relationships. The G20 presents South Africa with a significant opportunity to showcase its economic potential on the global scale, advocate for African interests, attract foreign investment, promote sustainable development, and solidify its relationship and role in international affairs, particularly by focusing on issues such as climate change and inclusive growth. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will come to Minister Nkawane. Human capital development is crucial for inclusive growth, especially in this new era that is catalyzed by technological development. How is South Africa integrating education and skills development into its G20 agenda in the AI era? What are the key considerations in light of unemployment levels being high and the rapidly changing nature of the job market?
No, thank you so much, Prof, for your question. I think what I need to first indicate is that the G20 presidency is a very important platform for us as the country, so that we get an opportunity to re-engineer our education system as the country to make sure that we are responsive to the needs of the economy. So in terms of the priorities that we are looking at as the Education Working Group, we are focusing on professional education development program, where we say we want to see a holistic approach in our education reforms, where we pay attention to foundation phase of the education system up until the post-school education and training system. The challenge that we are facing as far as unemployment is concerned is the skills mismatch, where we produce graduates that are not sought by the labor market. So what we want to look at is to ensure that we integrate our education systems, be it in the community education system, be it in the technical and vocational and education system, or be it a university, to the skills that are in demand in our economy. What the country is doing currently is to also look at this issue by actually establishing a Human Resource Development Council that is attending to this skills mismatch, and to make sure that they also look at upskilling and reskilling. Currently, this council is chaired by the Deputy President, Human Resource Development Council, and there are also academics and professionals from various industries that form part of this council. With this council, we are also going to be having a summit this year, where we are going to take a stock and see how best can we then turn around the situation. The industry will be part of these discussions. where we're going to develop an implementation plan on the human resource development strategy, as well as encourage learners in basic education to consider taking STEM subjects, so that at the end of the day, they take programs, or they enroll to programs that are responsive to the needs of the economy, so that then we turn around the situation in the country. Thank you.
Minister Steenhuisen, I always said that I've done many, many things in many, many different countries. But one thing that really humbled me when I was still living in South Africa was being a farmer. Every time, they say, oh, your goats have died. Why? Oh, there is a poisonous plant. How am I supposed to know about that? And the issue of food security and agricultural resilience are critical global challenges. How is South Africa positioning these issues within its G20 leadership?
Working? There we go. Thank you very much, Professor and Deputy President, and of course everyone here today. I think South Africa's presidency of the G20 comes at an incredibly challenging time for agriculture globally, with a number of climate change shocks, the ongoing global instability in supply chains, and food security is not just about producing more, it's about making sure that we have continuous access and sustainable access to good quality food stocks, and then build resilience against the shocks that potentially can occur, such as extreme weather events and geopolitical disruptions. South Africa's G20 is emphasizing the fact that these need early warning systems, they need risk mitigation strategies, and sustainable farming practices that can be used then to withstand these pressures. And part of this strategy involves supporting regional food security networks, and this is where infrastructure becomes very, very important. How do we move agricultural products not only through South Africa, but in the African continent itself? And it speaks to things like port logistics and rail logistics. And so what along with ensuring that we are being able to deal with long-term security while also fostering economic growth, particularly in rural communities. Another key priority is obviously strengthening agricultural trade cooperation. And we want to use the G20 to make the case why G20 countries should be enhancing and activating trade, but also the importance of Africa in the global trade environment. And I think that's also why it's so fundamentally important that we're hosting the first G20 in Africa. And as Minister Tower said, it's not just an opportunity for South Africa. It's a wonderful, and I think that by linking the G20 countries to focus on some of the issues I've spoken about, but also about financing, particularly for smallholder farmers. How do we include more people in the value chains that we build? I think we're able to build a far more inclusive, particularly for women and youth, agricultural environment. Because it's only through including all the players that you can say you've got an equitable agricultural system. I think that agriculture also needs to realize, and you've spoken about these difficulties, and it's not easy, but it has to evolve to embrace the technical environment. And the huge advances in AI and other big data, the ability to crunch big data, has huge potential for us to be able to monitor soil conditions, to be able to monitor weather patterns, to develop early warning systems, but also to potentially put the most important information that a farmer in a rural area could need in a smartphone, being able to diagnose animal diseases, plant diseases, and be provided in real time with potential solutions. Now, this offers a huge game changer to particularly our small-scale agricultural holders who sometimes don't have the luxury of having access to an extension officer or the like, and yet we can, through AI and all of these new technologies, put an extension officer into the pocket of every farmer, wherever they may be on the continent. And then, of course, climate change remains a direct threat to the global agricultural community, and we obviously need to look at how we can become more resilient using things like soil conservation and focusing on the bioeconomy and how we can enhance that going forward. But I think that the challenge that we face today demands now bold and collaborative action. I think that you've seen a tendency of late for people to contract into their own worlds. But I think that if we're going to beat these problems globally, we need collective action of all of us. And now, more than ever, it requires us to collaborate. And using the G20 as that platform, I believe we've got a good opportunity to position South Africa, but also the African continent, as the exemplar of a place that is alive with possibility and opportunity. Thank you.
Minister Mackenzie, cultural exchange and sports diplomacy can be a powerful tools for international cooperation. How do you see these elements contributing to South Africa's G20 presidency? And maybe you can also link it to the economic development.
Thank you, Professor. Before I answer, I was sitting there reading through your bio, and it made me think because I saw that you have a PhD. And the last time I was invited on a panel, they got the name right and they got the titles wrong. So they said, Mr. Gayton Mackenzie is next. He has a PhD. He has an MBA. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't have a PhD. And the crowd is clapping when they heard I have a PhD. So I walked upstage and I sat down. I said, yeah, I do have a PhD. I do have an MBA. My PhD stands for passed high school with difficulty. And the MBA married but available. On a more serious note, you know, the G20 is, I think it's an earth-shattering event for Africa. You know, it's such a big thing that we're having the G20 presidency. And it's something that we should use to the maximum for the first. You know, when we say in the G20 documents that we are for equality and for solidarity and sustainability, we mean that. And in my arena of sport, arts, and culture, I will show you why is it that we are fighting for equality and why do we need solidarity from people, our friends like Japan. My one son is in South Africa and the other one is schooling in America. Both of them are content creators, which is the new gold for young people. But the one in America is getting paid, and no one on the African continent is being paid. They're doing absolutely the same thing. Now, no one can give you an explanation for that, except that it is another form of colonizing our young kids. I know of a man that lived in Uganda. He moved to Europe. He was jobless in Uganda. He got to Europe. He's worth 200 million only from content. So if he had the same content in Africa, he would still have been jobless. Treat everybody equal. And if I come to sports, the business of sport is the new driver in the world. Sports business is huge. You have countries like Qatar that in the Middle East that has realized that sport economy is big. It's massive. It takes your GDP we're not part of the world sports calendar. People don't want to talk about this. And that's when I talk about equality. How come that, let's take the Olympics. In the hundreds of years of the Olympics existence, Africa has never had hosted the Olympics. Where we are sitting, Japan, 4 times. Whilst Africa, not South Africa, has never hosted the Olympics. F1, we've never had an F1 during democracy. Tennis, volleyball, I can go on and on and on and on. And that's when I talk about equality, and solidarity is for friends of us like Japan to speak up. They must be in solidarity with you. And for me, the G20 presidency is an opportunity for us to show the world it can't be that our children are being reared to be slaves without payment. It can't be that the world is enjoying in Italy. And you look at Monaco. There's 600-kilometer difference, 600-kilometer distance, I think, between the two. In one continent, in Europe, you have 2 in Italy, 1 in Monaco, in a radius of 600 kilometers. You have 3 F1s. But in the whole continent of Africa, you don't have 1. And people must not come and say Africa is not ready. The best World Cup that has ever been hosted for football come from Africa. And anybody that disputes that, let them give me a song of any other country that has been sang, that they can remember. Thank you very much.
So I'm going to come to Minister Tau and Minister Steenhuisen. How can Japan and South Africa collaborate to accelerate progress on the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda? I'll give you 1 minute each. Minister Tau.
Well, firstly, I think that when you're talking sustainability in the context of Africa in particular, you're talking about the need to ensure that you're able to harness and use your resources more sustainably. In our context, it is taking into account energy as an example, the ability to transition into cleaner energies, which is a global agenda, in an environment where not all have access to energy in the first instance. So the first point that you need to address relates to access. The second point that you need to address relates to your ability to utilize the critical resources, the critical minerals that we have on the continent. The third is to enable those countries that have not been able to have access to electricity or access to energy platforms to be able to leapfrog, so to say. They don't have to go through the phase of utilizing fossil fuels as part of their sustainability agenda. So the cooperation should be practical, responsive to realities on the ground, and realistic to the levels of development and challenges that we confront on the continent. Thank you.
Minister Steenhuisen.
Yeah, thanks. I think that there's huge opportunity and a unique opportunity for Japan and South Africa to work together. Japan has excellent experience in infrastructure, in technology, and those are all huge things that, through a knowledge-sharing basis, could assist South Africa, particularly when it comes to some of our critical infrastructure like port, like rail, which are areas which are holding us back currently. And I think that there's a huge opportunity for collaboration there. I also think there's a huge opportunity in deepening and widening the trade relations between our two countries. It gives South Africa a huge opportunity to diversify our types of trade with other countries around the world, particularly given some of the pressures we're feeling in some markets. It makes sense in that we diversify, and we have great products in South Africa. We've got great agricultural products. And conversely, I think South Africa's positioning as the gateway to Africa gives Japan huge opportunities for investment, and assisting us with critical infrastructure will also enable them, for instance, through ports, to move their products around. So I see a huge opportunity for joint two-way collaboration between Japan and South Africa on some of these critical areas of infrastructure and of trade. Thank you.
To Minister Nkabane and Minister Mackenzie, 1 minute each. As we know all too well, the Global South is disproportionately impacted by stalled progress in achieving the SDGs. What unique African perspective is South Africa bringing to the G20 table, and how might this reshape global governance?
maybe one of the issues that we need to look at is the mutual recognition of qualification in the global context, Prof, of which I believe you are aware of, where South Africa as the chair has ratified the Global Convention on the Recognition of Qualification concerning higher education, so that maybe if I enroll for a particular program here at UN, then when I go back home, I don't have any challenges. So it's one of the critical areas that we need to look at, but to ensure academic mobility is one of the critical areas that we need to look at, capacity building and so forth, so that at the end of the day, we reshape the global governance and the implementation strategy of our sustainable development goals.
Minister Mackenzie.
I want to make an example with India, and everybody speaks about AI. India is very clear. When they build a road, for instance, they will tell you exactly, you will not use machines here. You'll use human capital because we have a lot of unemployed youth in India. And I think that our President Cyril Ramaphosa said something one day. He said, he read a book where it says, we first get dirty before we clean up, or something along those lines. We need to be firm in the fact that we can't be compared with first world countries, because our problems are third world countries. We are a third world country faced with third world country problems. And what I'm trying to say is that Africa needs to stand firm and say, yeah, you want the energy transition, you want the just energy, but we have for that. We shouldn't just say, oh no, we move away from coal, we move away from, we now in AI. It should be matched with the problems facing our people. And when we have an opportunity like now, we have an opportunity where if you want to help us to help ourselves. We have opportunity now with having the president of the African Development Bank, capable lady. So we came to Japan and we asked our friends here, because Japan is a friend of South Africa, vote for this lady. It shouldn't even be a long discussion. When your friend asks you something, you say, I'm going to be there. Thank you. She's here, Prof. She's here. She's here. Swati, just rise. People must see you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will give you the opportunity to ask questions. And how I first became a leader. I'm not talking about the leader of the United Nations University. When I was still in primary school, my father bought me a Casio watch. It was made in Japan. I arrive at school, the principal says, you have a watch. I am going to assign you a leadership responsibility. You shall be a bell ringer. A bell ringer is the person who, if it is break, he goes and ring the bell. Whoever controls time is a leader, isn't it? So technological diplomacy is still as important today as it was, despite my youthful look 40 years ago, So thank you very much. So please raise your hand. I'm going to give you, I don't give numbers, I give alphabets. I'm told people should not be counted. And then somebody will come to you. If you raise your hands, I'll give you a letter, which will be, you are A, you are B, where is C? C, madam. Do we have a D? D, E, and by the way, these are not grading scores. So an A does not mean it's an A in the grading sense. So can we go to A, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Husna Kipsoi. I am from Kenya, and it is a delight to be here today. Thank you so much for your wonderful insights. My question relates to critical minerals. So on the African continent, the use, the extraction, and benefit sharing of natural resources are resource scarce. And so I'd like to know in the work that South Africa is doing for critical minerals, is it also a priority for you to address the conflict dynamics around natural resource use and to possibly support peace processes to ensure beneficial use of natural resources? Thank you very much.
I'm going to go to B because Nicholas, who is a timekeeper, has come and informed me that we have just 10 minutes. B?
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Yves Petemoya Clinton from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and I'm very happy and grateful to be here and for all the information you'll be providing. My question is to His Excellency, Mr. Tao, the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. You mentioned something saying that the priority recently with the geopolitical what is happening to the US, for example, when a lot of funds have been Africa. So my question is to know how South Africa is trying to position itself and also as an African leader in this energy transition regarding this position of the Western, and how do you think it can be another opportunity for a country like Japan and the rest of the world? Thank you very much.
C. Number C. Here, Madam Ike Game.
Actually, I didn't intend to have questions, but I saw there was no hands coming up, so I raised it, but then there were other interesting questions coming up. So I will have very quick comment and question. The first to the Trade and Investment Minister. Within the theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainability, your policy of BBBEEE, which is very foreign to Japanese people because we have monoculture. So it's a very specific South Africa policies. How do you explain that policy is attractive to Japanese companies, 273 companies? The question to Ministry of Agriculture. Agriculture production is not food production. Food is not nutrition, and I want to bring the attention to the importance of nutrition. From that point of view, historically, African countries has been producing agriculture product for the international market at the cost of local production of indigenous food. So I would like to know if you have any specific efforts to encourage genuine local food, which is nutritious to the people in Africa. And Japanese people are interested in these indigenous food. We are not that much interested in Western food. Actually, there is a trend for healthy food. So I would like to hear your vision.
Madam, I'm going to arrange that. I'm going to arrange that when we go to reception, you can ask the rest of the questions individually.
So the third question was very interesting question addressed to the sports minister, but actually it is a political question. Under the spirit of solidarity, facing current leadership in the world, I think there is a common thing South Africa and Japan shares vis-a-vis dealing with the United States. So I would like to hear anybody to speak about solidarity between Japan and South Africa for that purpose. That's all.
So I'm going to stop the questions now. I don't think we have the time for the rest of the questions. Please, I'm going to give each one of you just 1 minute to give us a response. Thank you.
At this point, I feel like it's a setup listening to the questions. Yeah, firstly, let me start with the issue around broad-based Black economic empowerment. And in many ways, you've reflected on Japan as a unicultural society. But in many ways, it has also evolved as a common society in a common development trajectory. Our history is fundamentally different. Our history is that of systemic subjugation of Black people and of women in our country through legislation. legislation that was designed to ensure that black people and women do not have equitable access to economic opportunity, to education, to property rights, etc., etc. As a country that seeks to create equity and equality, to reverse that, you need to impose mechanisms of affirmative action, because it's not going to change on its own. You're not going to create a society where black people suddenly enjoy prosperity because there's a democratic dispensation. It must be that there's deliberate processes and policies that affirm black people, so that when you say you build a truly non-racial South Africa that becomes a united country, you have a country where access to opportunity, to skill, to growth, to entrepreneurship is not determined by your race, class, nor gender. And for us, that's why black economic empowerment is that fundamental. And then in relation to the issue of critical minerals, certainly we have taken a view that our critical minerals policy has taken an approach that says we should leverage off each other. We have part of the critical minerals, but our sister countries on the continent have other components of the critical minerals. And we need to move away from a pit to pot approach where essentially the minerals are extracted from South Africa, taken to the ports, and taken out of the country for beneficiation somewhere else. We must have beneficiation and industrialization at source, or as close to source as possible, and we should be able to invest our own resources, but also mobilize international capital to invest in building those industries on the African continent. And this is important also in relation to how global supply chains are evolving. The reality is that as global supply chains evolve, you have to place greater reliance of where the source of your development is. Because the disruption that's happening now is primarily because there's a disjuncture in the global supply chains. So aligning it to development at source is in the interest not just of us as Africa, in the interest of peace in Africa, but it's also in the interest of those who seek to trade in these critical minerals, or at least the supply chains that we're talking about. Last point in this regard is that South Africa occupies a strategic geographic position. It is there where the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans meet, but it is also a platform where trade should be able to happen going forward, and beneficiating from there and the continent enables you to leverage both sides of if you like, the current geopolitical divide. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Minister Steen.
Yep. Thank you, and the Honourable Lady is absolutely right. Access to food is not good enough. It's access to nutritious food. And recently allows us to drill down to a district management level of not only the quantity of food available, but the quality of it, and whether people are getting access to nutrition that they require. For instance, in some areas there may be very good access to food, but it's heavy starch, which then has a further burden on comorbidities in health. So it's about getting citizens to eat a balanced diet and have access to nutritious food. And yes, there are a host of traditional foods that are available in South Africa, and we are also in the process of marketing some of those around the world. For instance, rooibos tea is a very good health product. We supply it extensively now into China. It's indigenous to South Africa, and it's a healthy product that assists with free radicals and digestion, and we obviously look to market that. But I'm very glad there's a demand for these types of products here in Japan, because I'm looking greatly forward, Deputy President, to seeing if we can get Nkomboti after this visit. Thank you very much.
Mr. McKinsey?
Yeah, I think the young man at the back asked a very pertinent, it's more of a plea regarding, or the lady regarding, I think it's the lady, that regarding the, I think we need, to sort that problem out, we need honesty. All these minerals in Africa does not end up in Africa. It is taken from Africa, but it ends up somewhere in the world. And for as long as the people that are receivers of those minerals don't ask the hard questions, where's this mineral coming from? At what cost do we get this mineral? we will never stop the problem. So what I'm saying, number one, is we really need to have that conversation. Wherever there's war, we need to see which minerals are being taken advantage of and see where those minerals end up. So before you say Africa can't govern itself, Africa is a lost case, but be honest and say that maybe the buying of those minerals contributes in fueling the fire of the war. So we need that one. And what the lady has said regarding, you know, our deputy president and our president has been very clear, very clear. The issue with America is our second or third biggest trading partner. A lot of lies, one of the lies that has been told is there is a genocide in South Africa regarding white people. That's no such. So what we have decided as a government is we will engage America bilaterally. Our deputy president is not people of Twitter and social media. They don't do the dialogue through that. They will follow the accepted channels, and very soon we'll sort out our problems with, I must say, when I opened the newspaper yesterday and I saw that Japan must now pay more to America for the base here, I was a bit happy to see we are not the only ones that are under fire.
Minister Nkabane.
No, thank you so much, Prof. I also want to speak on this one, the first question that was raised by the lady in relation to beneficiation, which is linked to conflict dynamics. You know, Prof, as much as she has actually picked up this dynamic, there are a number of factors that are linked to beneficiation as well as conflict, especially in the mineral resources space. The critical factor that I think we need to also zoom into is the barrier to entry, which is fundamental, because some of them, they become zamazamas because they do not have access, or there is a challenge of barrier to entry at the space. However, what we need to be doing is to look at the policy reforms as far as mineral resources is concerned. Hence, you know, with us as the country, we have MPRDA, which, where the state is a custodian of mineral resources on behalf of the people as a whole in the country. So amongst the interventions as far as policy reforms that we've put in place as the country to try and stabilize or to manage those dynamics within the mineral resources space is to adopt as the cabinet the critical mineral resources strategy, of which we've decided to come up with our broader definition of what critical mineral is.